30-hour work week is getting a lot of interest around the world, and many companies are looking into this. Many countries are looking into this. But is it a good idea? I'm talking today to two people, Juliana and Lena, who actually wrote a master's thesis on this at the University of Lund in Sweden. So I'm a practical guy, okay? So let me ask you guys, let me start with this question. What is the coolest example you've seen of this? A workplace where this 30-hour work week worked really well?
Definitely a digital marketing agency in Scotland. They're called Senchi Digital. They're a small team led by their founder, Chris Torres, and we did our study with them and we interviewed them throughout the whole process, and that's definitely a successful 30-hour work week example.
And what were the main things they got out of it? Why, what were the benefits?
Well, I think the benefit is that basically the first benefit is that they have happier and healthier employees at the moment. They are really successful in doing it since over a year. They haven't lost any clients. They didn't drop productivity. So they are running as usual, with the difference that they all work about 10 hours less per week.
Mm-hmm. And very specifically, how did they do it? Do they have 5 working days but shorter working days, or did they shift to a 4-day work week, or how did they do it?
In their case, it was a 30-hour work week that they really split into 5 days. So they basically work 6 hours a day, but it comes down to 5 hours a day because of meetings they have and because of breaks they take, and so basically it's 5 hours a day.
And I just want to make this perfectly clear. So even though they're working less, they're still getting the same amount of work done, only in fewer hours. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that was the whole issue, I guess, about the 30-hour work week. So they really reduced the working hours, and the CEO made clear that they actually are as productive as before.
Wow, that is awesome. That is just awesome. What a great project. I'm really looking forward to talking more about this. Could you please introduce yourselves?
Yes, of course. So as you said, my name is Juliana, and we studied together, Lena and me, at Lund University, a program for knowledge work and managing knowledge and managing change. And before that, I studied at the Vienna University of Economics and Business.
Well, and I'm Lena. I'm from Germany, 27 years old, and I studied in Germany and Scotland international business first for my BA, and then joined the lovely program in Lund, which is called, as Juliana said, Managing People, Knowledge and Change, where Juliana and I met, and we've started that project together towards the end of our master. And yeah, currently we're looking forward to promote the 30-hour work week and to establish a 30-hour work week in the future.
That's wonderful. And tell me, what drew you to this topic? I mean, out of all of the potential topics you have chosen for your master's thesis, you picked this. Why?
I mean, we were looking at the situation for knowledge workers in the economy. So what are work conditions? What are problems? Really future oriented. What could be a problem or a challenge in the future? And what we saw was that people who work in offices, they have massive over hours these days. They have lots of stress. People complain about stress, about burnout syndromes, about work intensification. So things are getting faster and quicker. They have to be up to speed all the time. It's a problem for them to like deconnect from work. And generally, we saw that there is an increasing demand for work-life balance. So we thought, okay, is that working? Like, what are all these challenges? What can we do against them? And then we found that example of Senchi, and we came across different alternative working hour models, and the 30-hour work week was one of them. And then basically our personal motivation. I mean, who on earth is not dreaming of less hours at work? So I thought that would be a perfect match. And yeah, that drew us to this topic and making us a tough project for a couple of months and writing this thesis on it.
Right. I think also to add there, just in general, I think it's important to, or we thought it's important to ask ourselves if it is actually needed to work 40 plus hours, because actually modern technologies increased our productivity and efficiency levels so much that it might not be even needed anymore to work that much. But it's just a standard that we don't really question. And we found, for example, that Keynes already 1930 said that in about 100 years, 15 hours a week will be sufficient to fulfill all our needs, at least in terms of production. So we thought it might be interesting to question that fact of working 40 hours and more.
Yeah, boy, was he ever wrong.
Unfortunately.
And what is the specific title of your thesis? Could you share that, please?
We have the thesis right here. It's only a print copy, but it's called the 30-hour work week, a promising alternative for knowledge workers, ? Because we answer the question, is it or is it not a promising alternative?
So is it?
One of you, I think, yes, right, Juliana?
Yeah. So, I mean, we thought the biggest benefits, you kind of can split them into the benefits for the employees and the business side. And for the employees, the benefits are really, like, they are great, and you can really see that there are so many of them. In our thesis, we called the 30-hour work week the life enhancer, because it actually makes life much better. The 30-hour work week might lead to less stress at work, but also overall in life. It gives you more relaxation times. You can recharge your batteries more. It actually also improves health. And it's just much easier for employees to switch off from work and to have more time with their friends, with their families, for hobbies, for doing something healthy for yourself. So it's actually really, a life enhancer.
Also, from the business side of things, we found so many benefits. So we thought the 30-hour work week really works because from a business side of things, one aspect is obviously attracting and retaining employees. So you want to have a strong employer brand. And if the people are happy and spread the word, then this is obviously going to help it. And the 30-hour work week, we felt that people really appreciated their word it was given, that they would work hard and then could leave after 6 hours. So that helped retaining and attracting employees. We also found that from a business side of things, like there's lots of a phenomenon like called empty labor. So people, they sit at work, but they don't actually focus on work. So the 30-hour work week, coming along with all the changes that were made in the business, they really help people focus on their work. They increased efficiency and focus. So that's something which is definitely beneficial for every business, I'd say. And also in general, like people felt more, had a stronger bond to, we felt the employees, a stronger bond to their employer. So I think overall, to sum it up, it really, the benefit is that it brings happier and healthier employees, and that it does help the business in efficiency and focus, and to establish an attractive employer brand, which is, I guess, in our century, very, very a war of talent, the so-called war of talent under knowledge workers. So
makes perfect sense. I've been doing a lot of work recently for one of the big consulting firms for their subsidiaries in Eastern and Central Europe, where unemployment is currently extremely low. I mean, if you look at the unemployment rate in the Czech Republic or Slovakia, Poland, among highly trained, skilled employees, it's essentially zero. Everybody who wants a job has a job. So they're currently looking at how can we attract and retain the best talent, right? In competition with not only the other consulting companies, but also in competition with startups and with IT companies and banks and everybody else. And certainly one of the big problems they've been facing is that they have this culture of overwork, right? In many big organizations, the way you have proved yourself is by working a lot of hours. So you're at the office 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You're maybe not productive and working 80 hours a week, but you're there as a way to show engagement and commitment towards the organization, which leads to the empty labor that you're talking about, because you know you're there, you know you're not productive, but you kind of have to be there, which is essentially meaningless and wasted time. So if you were able to reduce that and be there for the time where you're productive and then go home and do something else, I think that would be an immensely valuable proposition towards employees to say, we don't work you to death. While you're here, we do expect you to be productive and do great work, but we don't expect you to work 80 hours a week. Did you find that in your research as well?
Yes, that's basically the essence, really. I mean, we also found that, especially in knowledge work, in, for example, big consultancies, the overhours are just crazy. And basically, it is about being there and showing that you are present. So we called that presenteeism, yes. And use that term kind of for that. So we think, I mean, it should be a shift towards more like, what do you actually do? And for that, you get remuneration, or for that, you get kind of, your boss kind of sees that what you're doing, and not basically why, like, just the hours you spend there.
Yes.
And also on a societal level, or for companies in general, I mean, if you ask yourself, how am I going to use my workforce efficiently or sustainably? So like, the labor, the so-called labor producing entity, I mean the workers itself, how sustainable is it to have them sitting 60 hours at their work desk, being tired and not getting enough sleep, don't have healthy diets and these kind of things? So in the long run, like, what would be the alternative solution, or what would be a better solution than that?
Yes. And there is definitely, we see a lot of burnout in many of these professions. People either leave and go work somewhere else, or they become stressed and they become sick. And this is definitely a way to alleviate that. So your thesis focused specifically on knowledge workers, which I find really interesting. I would imagine that some of this applies especially to knowledge workers, where you need to be functioning cognitively well at work, right? So I would imagine that in this case, this goes double for knowledge workers. Did you find that in your thesis as well?
Absolutely, we did. So I think, to make sure that we're all on the same picture, like, let's have a quick definition of knowledge worker. So the knowledge worker, the person itself, is a person where the input and output of the work is knowledge. So I think in the past we had the workers in society or in an economy were workers, so manufacture work. But today the trend is towards knowledge work societies, where people work with their knowledge, and that incorporates all different type of work, like in banks and like consultancies, designers, people who work with knowledge. And I think it really becomes clear, and for example, when we work with a digital agency, marketing agency, if you're a designer, ask yourself, how many hours per day could you be creative? Be like creative, sit on your butt and like be creative on the spot, or abstract in for example consultancies, complex ideas or complex numbers. That time for you to rest, to sleep, to recharge your batteries. So we did find that benefit for knowledge worker to have that time to switch off their brains and lower down the capacity for a while, and then be even stronger coming back, having more maybe creativity, because you got influence in your afternoon by walking through the woods, you find an idea. And I think if we ask ourselves, is sometimes at the desk doing something, but very often I think it comes while doing something else, or being inspired, or outside work maybe.
Yeah, I think that's part of what's so frustrating about knowledge work, is that it's not like a factory, right? If you have a factory where you have a machine that can produce 100 widgets an hour, and you run the machine for 1 hour, you get 100 widgets. You run it for 10 hours, you get 1,000 widgets, right? But so it scales linearly. Knowledge work does not do that. Sometimes it actually, if you work more hours, you actually get less output because you're tired, you're stressed, you're frustrated, you're unhappy, you're not functioning optimally cognitively. So I think that's really important to take into consideration. So what you found was that the 30-hour work week is really good for the knowledge worker. It's really good for the company. Did you find any challenges, any pitfalls, any way this can go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, that was also, of course, for us a big question, because if you ask people about 30-hour work week, they don't even think that this might work. So they wait for challenges to come, kind of. And what we found in our thesis and with this company was that there is a fear of companies that they lose clients. Also that, for example, employees take advantage of that system, that they actually only have to work 6 hours. Because if you only work 6 hours, then you have to be really active in those hours and be really efficient. But if you're not, then of course you would lose productivity overall. So those fears kind of all lead to one big challenge, which is maintaining productivity. And I mean, you basically lose 2 hours every day per employee. So that is, of course, a big challenge to overcome. But I think in our case, for example, with Senshi, they really managed to do that and to overcome that challenge. And it really worked because they speeded up work, they increased their efficiency, they had more effective communication. So they introduced those, we called it efficiency increasing tools. So you have to find them in order to speed up work, but also to kill time consumers and to really concentrate on actual work and not so much on, for example, empty labor. As we found in our thesis, empty labor might even be up to 40% of daily work. So it can be a lot, and you tend to stretch your work to the hours you have per day, right? So I think in order to overcome that challenge of the fall of productivity, you just really have to concentrate on finding the time wasters and on finding how to increase and where to increase your efficiency.
Yeah, I could imagine that one place this would face a lot of resistance is for people who have been used to the idea of the culture of overwork, right? That, you know, the more hours you work, the better. And I find this idea is just implanted so deeply in many leaders, especially in many organizations. Did you encounter this assumption in your work at all, or?
So I think in the specific example that we researched on, important to say is that everyone said, well, our CEO really drove that idea. So he was convinced that a 30-hour work week would be a good thing to do for the company, for himself, for the employees, and in general. So created the idea and forced people out of the door at past 3:30 kind of thing. So I think the resistance, as you said, there are many people who are convinced that this presenteeism is a really good idea and that it's absolutely necessary to be successful. So I think the resistance might be in that, so that we have to, like, the challenge is to track the idea and to show that this is actually not, that presenteeism rather is deconstructive than helpful. And that it's not actually necessary to work that many hours to have the same output. And I think one important thing to drive that forward is that a CEO lives that idea. And then if it's proven successful after a year and a bit, I think that's one of the best examples to how we could in the future introduce a 30-hour work week more often.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, exactly, right. Nothing convinces like results, right? Showing that this actually works. It's good for the bottom line, it's good for the customer, and it's good for the employees. Right. And you have shown that in your thesis. I think it's, I've read it. I think it's a wonderful, project. I love that you guys took this on. Tell me, if a CEO is watching this thinking, whoa, that sounds interesting. I could maybe do this in my organization. What would be a good place to start? What should that person do?
Well, I mean, there is no one solution for that, of course, because there are so many different companies and different employees and different teams. But I think a good starting point would be to analyze your business and to see where there are, for example, as I said before, the time wasters, and where and what efficiency increasing tools or communication increasing tools you can find and introduce.
And also, I think a CEO, if they want to introduce that, they can be sure that it has a lot of effects outside the workplace as well. I mean, they set an example in our world. I think there's a lot of publicity about it. We've seen that in the cases that we have researched. It is something that is concerning your workplace, but also beyond. I think it's a trend for the future, and I think it's something that might come, and the 30-hour work week is one solution and one step forward in that. So I think if that CEO wants to introduce it, please get in touch. Please, they could get some valuable input from our thesis, because we look at how specifically it can be done for a company, but also what it means for the society, what is a mindset it would challenge or it would give. Our thesis does, I think, paint a complex picture around this entire societal issue, which it really is. And so yeah, please get in touch, read the thesis, I would say, and promote the 30-hour work week as well.
That's awesome. And there is a broader societal issue here, right? Because we may be facing a future where there just is less work than there is now. Maybe, you know, Keynes's fantasy of shorter working hour, or shorter working week will finally come true with automation of, you know, transportation jobs, maybe automation of jobs in many knowledge workers even. So maybe a shorter working week could actually be, you know, a way to make sure that people still have jobs. So we don't have, you know, half the population working 80 hours a week and nobody, and half the population not working at all. Could that be a potential solution as well?
I think it does. The CEO that we spoke to in the company in our research case said, well, it would help employment to help employment to get more people employed. I mean, sorry, that you have like an overall society that there's just a few very specialized jobs, and that those people tend to be overworked and be very rare on the market. But if you overall introduce a 30-hour work week, because what's happening right now, I think, in many companies is that you work 2 jobs, one person working 2 jobs. This is rationalized, like they focus on cost savings and like, so one person maybe retires and a new one isn't hired. So the situation is that many people, I'd say, amongst knowledge workers, if you ask them, they say, I do at least work 1.5 jobs or maybe 2. So I think to reduce the hours and get the fair balance back, or maybe a healthy balance on that job market, I think is essential if we want to be productive in the future as well, and actually use the talent, which is across the nation, across the many different knowledge workers, and to use that potential. I think we have to see how we make people more productive. And in this aspect, I think the 30-hour work week does help to find solutions for those issues.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this amazing work. I love it. And thank you for sharing what you know here. And we're going to share your contact information on the video so people can get in touch if they want to know more about the 30-hour work week. And I can't wait to see a future where, you know, we're not working people to death, you know, with permanent overwork, while at the same time actually creating better results for the company and for our customers. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you too, Alex. It was really great.
Awesome.
Thanks.